off with the CC Designs Swiss Pixie Birthday Lucy image that I stamped onto the CC Designs Cobalt Quality 110-pound cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I'm starting with the skin, as always, and this time I'm going to do a darker skin tone again. So I'm going to use my E33 Copic marker, and then I'm adding in a bit of a darker tone with E35, and then finally my darkest shade, which is E37. Mostly just around the edges, and then I'm going to blend that out a little bit with E35 again. Just small circular motions pulling it further into the center, and then I'll use the E33 to blend it all really well. I'll remove any of the lines, and then once it's all blended, I'm going to add just a little bit of pink for her cheeks. I'm using R22, usually I use R20, but when I'm doing a darker skin tone like this, I use the R22 because it's a little bit deeper of a color, and then just lightly blended that a little bit with the E33 so that it wasn't just a splotch of pink. And then I go onto her hair. I'm using E44 first, my lightest color, and just using a flicking motion, so I turn it so it's I'm pulling the marker towards me, and then I go in with E47, do the exact same thing, and then finally do E49. There's absolutely no blending when I do the hair like this. I just keep flicking the marker so that I get it, until I get it the way I want it. So I keep going back and forth between the lighter and darker colors. Yeah, until I get it how I want it. There's no blending, just back and forth until I have it how I'd like it. Yeah, there's kind of no real explanation or reasoning. I just keep adding more and more color until I have it how I like it, kind of filling in any of the empty spots. And yeah, so once her hair is done, which just takes a little while, I usually go back with the medium color, the E47 usually is what finishes it off, as I use the medium color just to kind of fill in any of the spots so that it doesn't look so messy. So get that down, and then once the hair is done, I go on to everything else. So I'm going to use a bit of green for her little hair ties and the gifts, and then decided to color her shoes green. So I started with YG03, and then I went in with YG25 just to deepen it a bit, and then blended it again with YG03. And I'm not being super particular. One, I'm planning on cutting the image out, and two, when I go use the other colors, I can just push any of the areas that went over the lines, like push it back in again with the Copic marker. So for the oranges, I'm using YR23 and YR27, and then just blending them together with the lighter color. And yeah, you can see, like, especially with an image like this that's got so many little tiny detailed spots, I'm not trying to be perfect. It's just, I just want to lay the color down, and any spots that went over the lines, you can just push it back out with the next color. So I'm not too worried about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I realized when I was doing this, that one little spot was her hand that I totally forgot to color. So I just took the E35 and 37 and blended it out, and that was done. So for the blues, I did BG72 and then BG75 as my darker, and then blended those together, pushed out any of the orange or green that had gone over the lines, and then went back finally with the YG03 again, just to push out any of the orange or blue that went over into the green, just to kind of clean it up a bit so it wasn't a total mess, but again, doesn't have to be super perfect. So yeah, that was it for all the coloring. The rest of her outfit I wanted to paper piece. That was kind of my plan from the get-go. So I'm using pattern papers from the My Mind's Eye On the Bright Side 2 pack. And I cut these all out before I started filming just because it's a bit of detail cutting, but actually wasn't too hard. They're fairly simple. Her outfit is actually fairly simple cuts. It didn't take very long at all. It took less time to cut these out than it would have to color them. So I paper pieced all of the little different elements. I chose 3 different papers from the pack that kind of matched the colors I wanted to use. So just one piece at a time, using my Tombow Mono Multi liquid adhesive to adhere everything down. And then for her little leggings, I chose one of the orange pattern papers. You can just see that starting to like completely finish off the whole image once you've got everything in place. And of course, I can't leave the pattern paper just as is. It's got to be shaded and everything else so it fits in, so it's not just floating there. So first off, I added colored in the dots with the BG75 marker, Once that was done, I had to add some shading, so I'm just using my W3 Copic and W1. I started with the W3, added in some shading, and then I'm just going to blend that a little tiny bit with the W1, and that's all there is to it. So once I get it all blended out, then I'm going to trim out the image with my detail cutting scissors, which I did off camera because it takes that, and I have my scissors like right in front of my face, so you can't really film that. So now for the card itself, I already had a layout in mind, and that's why I cut this image out, because she's actually a pretty big image for the standard A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I did my layout, laid out all the pattern papers how I wanted, and then I grabbed this stamp from, this is the CC Designs Party Time logos. So I grabbed the stamp, inked it up with black ink, and just kind of stamped it a little bit off the pattern paper like that. I just thought it kind of added a cute little element. And then for the sentiment, I wanted to use It's a Celebration from my It's Your Birthday set. And I had the piece of pattern paper I wanted to stamp it on, but I wasn't 100% positive yet on where I was going to put it. But I used my stamp positioner and then inked up the stamp with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And on a little piece like this that I've already pre-cut, I used a teeny little bit of adhesive just to hold it onto my mat so it doesn't shift when I'm using the stamp positioner, so that I can get the stamp stamped straight right onto this little piece of paper. And it just works perfectly doing it like that. And by using a tiny amount of adhesive, it keeps in place, but it doesn't have it permanently adhered to my mat. So yeah, I fiddled around with the layout a tiny bit. I wasn't sure where I was going to put it, because again, it was a rather large main image. So I trimmed it down a bit and then stuck it onto the card front, and it fit just perfectly. So that worked, and then I just used the Tombow Mono Multi again to adhere the image down. I thought about putting it up on dimensionals, but decided I wanted it just flat this time. So got the glue on, got that pressed down into the card front, and then I just had this little silk Prima flower in my stash that was the perfect shade of orange. So I grabbed that and then a random jumbo brad I had and attached that. And that was actually it for the embellishments. I thought about adding ribbon and other things, but decided not to this time. So then I adhered that to a mat of orange cardstock. The orange cardstock again is from my stash. I think it's an old Stampin' Up! In color from a couple years ago. I think it's Tangerine Tango, but I'm not positive. I didn't have it labeled. And then same with this kind of celery shade of cardstock as my card base. That was also from my stash. I just grabbed colors that would work. And then of course I had to add some glitter. I tried not to. I was going to leave it a little more plain, and I couldn't help myself. And so I grabbed my crystal stickles and went to town and covered the gifts and her shoes and her dress with stickles because it needed glitter. So yeah. For the inside of the card, more pattern paper. The green leaf pattern is actually where you can write your message to the receiver of the card, because it's just kind of a simpler pattern, so you can just, a ballpoint pen will show up perfectly on it. And then I chose another sentiment. This one's from the Best Birthday Wishes stamp set. And then use my stamp positioner again to get that lined up along the top of this little piece of pattern paper. Just like so. So once I've got that, it's just a matter of adhering everything for the inside of the card. So yeah, super simple. Get that all adhered down, kind of how I wanted it for the layout, kind of thinking along the same lines as the outside. As always, there will be a link below to my blog post, and then in the blog post there will be a link to all the supplies used. And yeah, that's all there is to it. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!